Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy Thursday, Dr. Paul. How are we doing?
I'm doing fine. Every once in a while, we sort of wish things so that we can get variety and steer sometime toward or away from some subject. And some days, we have to confess a little bit. We sort of get tired of this guy, Fauci.
Yeah,
You'd think everybody would know about him and would be aware of him.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's in the news, so it's our duty to our viewers to report what we heard. And Fauci's is back in the news again. And there's a discussion going on in my own mind and maybe with you on whether what we're going to talk about, whether he's telling the truth or not.
Yeah, he may finally be telling the truth, don't you think?
Yeah, that'd be something.
Well, he's interesting. He was on with Andrea Mitchell on MSNBC. Andrea Mitchell's been around for a while, and I just got to cue it up, and then we'll play the video. But she's basically saying to him, "Hey, Fauci, basically we're on the same team here, but guess what? The Senate just voted against the vax mandates. The courts are ruling against the vax mandates. Democratic governors are backing way off because they see how unpopular it is. For political reasons, do you think maybe we should just back off a little bit too? You know, wink, wink." And here's his response. Let's just watch this whole clip, and you'll get a sense of the real Tony Fauci.
There's so much opposition now in Congress, and of course the states, even in Democratic states, Governor Whitmer in Michigan and other places, this is becoming just a political test, and the outlook is not at all a sure thing in the court system. Is there any thought of backing off of that and trying to avoid, all the outcry against it?
Yeah, but, Andrew, we really have to get people vaccinated. I mean, I understand, and we all understand, how people do not like to be told what to do. They want to make their own choice and their own free will. I get that, and I respect that. But these are unusual times, and you can't think only of yourself and your own personal opinion, but you've got to think about your communal responsibility to get yourself and your family, and indirectly then the community, protected. So I would prefer, and we all would prefer, that people would be voluntarily getting vaccinated. But if they're not going to do that, sometimes you've got to do things that are unpopular, but that clearly supersede individual choices and are directed predominantly at the communal good. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about requirements.
So there's Fauci, the unelected dictator. I'd rather people take them voluntarily, but you're going to get them like it or not.
Yeah, this is the whole thing. He's dishing out the orders, and he feels like he can be, pompous about this whole thing. But if he were on the receiving end, which he should be, I mean, he should be a lowly bureaucrat who's on the verge of being fired, and his boss should be, the executive branch and even the Senate. Maybe instruction coming from the Senate he should obey, but he'd mock that as well. So yes, he's playing the role of hero, and he has to do this. And this whole thing, of course, the annoying thing was his conclusion that this whole thing's his responsibility. It's difficult. We have to do it. We're responsible to force people to do things that they don't like, and we know what it is. So and he says, even if it supersedes, it must supersede liberty, and then we still have to do it. So that's an ugly statement, but he's telling the truth that he's superseding, and that's his philosophy. That's part of his philosophy, that you do have to sacrifice liberty. And of course, this fits into my statement that I frequently use, is you should never have to sacrifice liberty for safety or security or medical advice from a bureaucrat. You should never have to sacrifice liberty for that. And just think of the sacrifice of liberty that has occurred here in the past couple years, and let's hope that trend is changing and going in the opposite direction again.
Well, Fauci's no Scott Gottlieb. Gottlieb knows which way the wind's blowing, and he always ends up with his pockets full of money. Fauci, if he's not careful, is going to wind up being the perfect fall guy for this, because as we said, and we looked at an article today from, I think it was Politico, where even the Dems now are sensing the tide. They saw that Newsom barely escaped his recall, very closer than expected, let's put it that way. Murphy in New Jersey barely, speaking of barely, squeaked by. The Democrats, not unfortunately for public health reasons or for freedom or for liberty reasons, but raw political reasons, they are backing away. And the Politico article talks about Gretchen Whitmer, who, as you know, she wouldn't let you get some seeds to plant some plants last year because she was such a fascist. Now she's saying, no, we're not going to have a vax mandate here, forget that. Joe Manchin turned against and voted with the Republicans to overturn, to disapprove of the mandates. Murphy, he said no, he's not going to go for vax mandates. Hochul, who replaced Cuomo in New York, the city now has gone full fascist, but she's saying no, she's not for those. So Democrats are their political antenna are tuned to this, and they're saying this is a loser. Plus, we saw what happened in Virginia. This is a loser. We're running away from it. And Fauci's going to find himself the last man on a sinking ship.
Well, let's hope so. And let's move it along.
Yeah, sink the ship.
So Fauci has talked about, continuing the process. He says it absolutely, to be vaccinated and fulfill all these requirements, it will have to include a third shot. And that is always the third shot is just part of that. That's to maintain the bigger picture of control. You control the state over the people, which also brings up the subject, though not mentioned directly, of the vaccine passport.
Yeah.
So if they lose, if the Fauci people lose this battle and Gates doesn't have this, they might lose the vaccine passport, which is the real thing that's the most damaging thing of all this, and it's already, no matter what news seems to knock them down, that we would think they ought to walk away and just get out of it because it should be embarrassing to them. But no, they just keep doing it, and they are determined. They will continue on this process. They know exactly what they want, and it hasn't gone well for the people. But there's the one other thing that they need to do this is show how dangerous is these variants. Yeah. Oh, they're terribly damaging, and yet we have some pretty good virologists that take a different opinion, and that should be sorted out because having a variant because it spreads rapidly, it's not like it's a much more horrible epidemic and pandemic. It's just maybe nature spreading immunity around a little faster. Yeah. So anyway, there's in England right now, they're reporting, they seem to cooperate a whole lot with Fauci and Gates. Have you noticed that?
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's a world event. So they say that in England, the beds are filled, the hospitals are filled, it's overflowing, and you better get more vaccines and the whole thing. But there's an opposition to this report. There's another report that says, ain't so. It's not quite that way. It's not quite as bad. But that type of thing has been something we've been dealing with for 2 years. What is said and the terrorist approach to scaring people to death and all the cynicism of it, it continues. They don't give up. And now the British are ready to lock down again.
Yeah, they are. Plan B is Boris Johnson. Let's hope he's going to be out soon. But we got a few clips on this, and let's try to go through them quickly because this is the Off Guardian. And these are started by former writers from The Guardian when The Guardian was a good progressive paper, wasn't afraid to go against things. By the way, look at their funding. They're funded by Gates, so we know why they've changed. But some writers left it and formed Off Guardian. They kind of keep an eye on The Guardian and The Guardian's nonsense that they put forward. And there was a great article. We noticed it on Zero Hedge, but it said ICUs are filled with the unvaccinated. And the Off Guardian, this is in the UK, does a COVID fact check. So let's go to that second clip. Let's skip the first one because you already talked about that one. Let's go to that second clip. Now this is a person on, this is just pictures. This is a person, doctor on TV. This is really a figure we really need to concentrate on. 90% of people in hospital have not been vaccinated. And Jenkins says it's actually 36% of the hospital are unvaccinated. Let's go to the next one. Here's The Guardian. They reported, the ICU is full of the unvaccinated. My patience with them is wearing thin. This is from a few months ago. Let's skip the next one and go one ahead. I put these in the wrong order. I apologize for that. And here is another one on the same theme. Kevin McGuire claimed in the BBC, the unvaccinated are filling up hospital beds. They're in the ICUs taking up precious resources. There are hospital waiting lists going up because there are so many unvaccinated people in the hospitals. Of course, this is to scare people that they must go get their shots in the UK because they're full of unvaccinated. Now go back one, sorry about that. This is from the Off Guardian article. And this is fascinating. Let's look at these statistics. As of last week, NHS, that's the UK health system, their own bed statistics reported that England has 4,330 available critical care beds, of which 894, 21% are being used by COVID patients, 60% non-COVID patients, and 19% empty. So England's critical care beds are not even 90% full, let alone 90% full of unvaccinated COVID patients. Now go ahead to, this is from the same article, so they're not full. They're not full. They've got 20% vacancy, which is pretty high. Let's go back and do that, the next clip that starts with let's be charitable, if we can put that up. And these are the actual numbers. But let's be charitable and assume that these people, all the experts on TV in the UK, misspoke or communicated their point badly. Let's assume they meant 90% of COVID hospitalizations are unvaccinated. Well, that's at least true, right? Wrong. The actual number is 35.4%. According to the UK's Health Security Agency data, page 31 of this document, 6,639 patients were admitted to the hospital with COVID in the weeks of 44 to 47 of this year. Of those 6,639, 2,355 were unvaccinated. So unvaccinated people do not even make up the majority of COVID cases, let alone the majority of ICU admissions in general. And Dr. Paul, as I do trust Off Guardian, but I do verify, and I went to the page on the UK government's website, the NHS website, and just go one more, and you'll see the chart. This is the chart. Go to the next clip if you can. This is the chart, page 31 of this document. You can do the tabulations yourself, which I did, and you can see that they are correct. A minority of COVID cases in UK hospitals are unvaccinated, not the vast majority.
So why do they do this? Because we wonder whether they're really promoting good science and worrying about sick people. And for some reason, the evidence isn't always verifying that. And of course, somebody has to sell the vaccines and make sure kids get it, even though they don't need it. And also, once again, the passport depends on this. So this does serve a purpose. That's about the only way I can understand this and why they work so hard at it when there's so much evidence going against them, including the political system. The politicians, are, both Republicans and Democrats, are getting disgusted with this all as well too. But there's another trick that they do to get more sick people out there, and that is have the relative definition of fully vaccinated.
Yes.
And so here we have changing the definition of fully vaccinated is more than just semantic. This is serious stuff, and this is something that can help them out because. You can just change it, and what they do, just think of how difficult it was at the beginning to measure the PCR test. They were doing it wrong. Who knows? They can change that test, and the developer of that test says it should never be used for this sort of thing. But they will change it, and they have changed it, and the definition is changing. And Fauci said that the definition will include the third shot. People will have to have service. Boy, that's not a couple thousand. That's a couple million or 100 billion more people. So they have to get rid of the supplies are out there. I'll bet they're way ahead on production, and they have to keep this going for a while longer. But they don't seem to pay any attention. I wonder if any major station ever reported, other than maybe one particular individual, of having a complication from the injection, because statistically, I think, and reliably so, are showing that a lot of people have suffered from this.
Yeah. Well, the real problem that these people are facing, the Faucis of the world, and even the minor Faucis of the world, is that people are irritated by the fact that for maybe 6 or 8 months, they were told that they were good little soldiers. They were fully vaccinated because they had their 2 shots and they were real good members of society. Now all of a sudden they're saying, no, you got to have a booster, and now there's Omicron, so you got 3 more shots, 3 more Moderna shots, and so you're going to have a lot of fatigue in people who are saying, even people who were gung-ho, they're going to start saying, I don't know about this. And the people, of course, who were resistant at first are now going to be twice as resistant, because they say, what? Now you're going to say I got 3, 4, 5 shots? Forget it, I'm not going to do it. So here's one of the things, and this is an article we noticed on Stat News, and it's about changing the definition and how it's more than semantics. Anyone can just look it up, Google it. But Carrie Arthoff, she's an associate professor of epidemiology at Johns Hopkins, and she has an answer with this problem about fully vaccinated. She doesn't want to use that term anymore, Dr. Paul. She doesn't want to use that, why? Because you're never fully vaccinated. She prefers the term up to date. Are you up to date on your shots, Dr. Paul?
Are you obeying the law?
Yes. Are you up to date? So that's what they want to do. They want to change the terms because they know how much the terms and the reality has changed.
They've been known to do that.
Yeah, they have.
Other times. But but they're continuing to expand their control. And the one I want to point out is some news on New York City. I don't think they're going to have that mayor forever, but he's going out with a lot of effort to continue this process. But this is important for me to look at. How many New Yorkers are at risk of losing their job over DeBlasio's vax mandate?
Yeah,
And I think I mentioned this the other day, that some of these mandates and the things they, when they want to take care of the unvaccinated, all of a sudden, if Trump did that, it would just make the point that we told you, Trump was a racist.
Yeah.
He's making all the black kids get vaccination.
Yeah.
But if this thing goes through, he wants 150,000, maybe up to 450,000 new vaccinations on there. And if that happened, 45% of them will be black.
Wow.
40% will be white, but 30% will be Hispanic. And that's how it's broken down, who has to get in. These are thousands of people. So in a way, if people are obsessed with explain everything in terms of race, they say, oh yeah, the black people are, if they happen not to like it, and some people believe, and I think there's strong historic support for the fact that there is a racial preference for vaccinations, and more leery. The blacks have been more leery, but that I don't think racism has anything to do with it. It's just his obsession with giving more people. But my point is, the fact that this happens, does he care?
Yeah.
But and does the media care to point out? And would they report it differently if Trump had done this?
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing statistic you just said. 500,000 people may lose their job, lose their livelihood, be thrown on the streets if they don't follow DeBlasio telling you to take a shot. And about half of them are going to be African Americans. I mean, you're right. If anyone else was doing that, they'd be rightly screaming it. But what kind of terrorism is this? We used the word yesterday, and I don't think we should use it as lightly as the government likes to use it. But if you think about, you're sitting here at home, you've got a job, you're paying the bills, you're barely surviving, you're hit with inflation, and all of a sudden DeBlasio comes on TV and says, you're going to lose your job, you're going to go out on the street. Just imagine how that would feel to people. And around Christmas time of all times, it's got to be heart-rending. It's got to be agonizing for these people.
And just the discussion we're having now, people can easily understand how disruptive this is, for the social order especially. But then again, there's another complication that has come up with COVID, which we had way too much crime anyway to begin with, and I anticipate the economy is going to get a lot worse because of the economic policies of Republicans and Democrats. But here we are, we're finding out that the cities are getting more violent than ever, and I sincerely believe it's related to these people who are in charge of cultural Marxism, and this whole idea that there is no such thing as crime, just going to get released. There's no order along the international borders. You can do what you want. You don't arrest people. You don't keep violent people who kill people, in prison, but for an hour or so, then they're let out without bail.
Yeah.
So this is part of that system. But COVID contributes to this because it's so disruptive, and people get depressed and people get shifted around. Anyway, there's a lot of violence. And the article that I want to just reference here is one that says, it's just crazy. 12 major cities hit all-time homicide records. It's getting worse, and yet today, if you based how we're doing in this country on the economic reports and unemployment record, everything is perfect.
Yeah.
And Biden's about to have control. He's going to control the inflation. He's looking after that.
He's gonna do it.
But here it is. This is all breaking out, but it's more complicated than just saying that it's the vaccine. But basically, those are things that the government's doing. It's illegal. They're committing moral crimes by forcing people to do it. And those statements that Fauci made that he has to do it, even if it's taking away your liberties. Like that's not a problem.
No biggie.
The government's supposed to be there to protect our liberties. Yeah. But here he admits that the purpose is to have this perfect world and everybody vaccinated, and that means you have to sacrifice your liberties, which we have to refute that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to close out with just a few charts without very much comment. And I know we're going to have to skip ahead quite a bit back there. Sorry about that. But the red and blue chart, if we can, it looks like a mountain. If we can put that up right now, from Denis Rancourt, who was on our show once. Make it a little bit bigger if you can. And this is fascinating. I'm not going to make any comment because I don't know what's going on here. But this is a chart of athlete collapses and deaths in 2021. And you can see it's pretty flat up until May, and then it turns into Mount Everest. And the chart reflects numbers at 5th December 2021. Denis Rancourt, who was on our show, an impressive and growing compilations of cardiac problems and deaths among young athletes. Very, very interesting. I don't know what the answer is. It might be cold weather, it might be post-pandemic stress syndrome, whatever the case. Let's look at the next one. This is the UK. This is an interesting chart. We always go back to Ian for these charts. The UK, and this is yesterday, the UK just announced new restrictions, including vaccine passports, which have already failed throughout Europe, and more mask mandates, which previously failed in the UK and are currently failing again. And you can see the chart. Mask mandates are lifted, mask mandates reinstated, up, up, up go the cases. They don't care about mandates. And the last one, our good friend Chris Rossini put this up on his Facebook page, and this is just one of the things that I scratch my head and wonder about. This is from NBC News. The CDC's COVID vaccination rates appear inflated, experts worry. Accuracy issues raise red flags because the Delta Health Plan and direct resources of the country's response to the pandemic. So we might be actually less vaccinated than the CDC even says. So Fauci's going to come by with a couple of guns and some shots. But I will close by, again, this is the last week to get Dr. Paul's book for your support. So thank you for your support for the Ron Paul Institute. I will include in the description how you can make your contribution and receive this as a premium, as a gift from us to you. And we do appreciate you watching the Liberty Report. Dr. Paul?
Very good. I'm going to close with, if we so desire, we might claim a little bit of good news, is that the attitudes are shifting. Politico is not exactly a libertarian or a Trump magazine. And there was an article there today by a few individuals that have the title to the article, Dems Begin Souring on Vaccine Mandates.
Yeah.
Maybe this, if it's significant, for them to publish this, it's sort of like, hey folks, wake up, you better pay attention. Maybe you're going to have to modify your mandates, and there are some. I'll bet you if you had secret votes in the Senate, when you had some mandate votes, I bet you'd get a lot more votes, because right now there has to be the obedience, to, and try to keep the Marxists in line, so they play that game. But I think this is a very real thing, that they are souring on it. But once again, I think the election in Virginia indicated that people who certainly have been independent and not good Republicans, and maybe weak Democrats, shifted their votes. So this to me is pretty good, because there's several, and the article lists several people who have started to warn, people about this. So I think this is very good. So eventually he said the tide will change, and let's hope it changes more rapidly in the right direction. Attitudes will change. People's attitudes have a lot of influence on government, and it is the change of attitudes and opinions and sentiments that really determine what kind of government we have. But no, I think we can look for the signs that people are getting pretty sick and tired of all this. So the big question is, and of course today we just reported the determination of our opposition, and they're as determined as ever. And as long as, maybe the symbol that we have to look for, as long as the establishment will hold Dr. Fauci in very, very high esteem, and he is the opinion maker on this subject, and a very, very large percentage of the media going to him for the news. I would say we have a ways to go, but I think that will eventually crack and it'll fade, because I believe he's on the wrong track as far as giving good information, on COVID. And what we're asking for and begging for is just a little bit of discussion, openness, and have the discussion the way medical problems should always be handled. And it should be guided by a special thing that was known for American medicine for a long time, and that's the doctor-patient relationship. You can still have all the outstanding discoveries in medicine, because many in history, before it was determined that once and accepted the government can only do it, they can only finance the research in order to get good medicine. Absolutely not necessary. The fact that we're a wealthy country, if we got the government out of the way and out of the vaccine business and out of the COVID business, we would not have more disease and more sickness. We would have more discussion and I think arrive at a position in caring for people that are sick in a much more positive way. So that, of course, is what we support, and that is what we'll continue to do, because we're convinced that the more freedom a country has, the individuals have, the more likelihood is that country will benefit from a greater amount of peace and prosperity. I thank you for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.